Welcome to MapleWoodian.com podcast. We have on the phone Marlon Brownlee, member of the Township Committee. Mr. Brownlee, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Joe. How are you today?
Good. We're glad to get you on the line. We wanted to first ask about the vote Tuesday night on the, I guess there was a proposal to allow alcohol sales at the library, and to be clear, this would not be opening a bar in the library. This would obviously be at certain events, correct?
Correct.
And the vote was 4-1, and the one was you. You had voted against it. And I know you had also voted against having alcohol in the beer garden at Maple Woodstock,
correct,
which occurred last year, and which I think a lot of people agree with you, unfortunately will occur again this year. What was your thought on the library vote, and why you wanted that to be not approved?
Well, I mean, as I said at the meeting, I mean, I love the library. I mean, not a month goes by that I'm not in the library. My office hours are at the Hilton branch of the library.
Absolutely.
So, when this proposal came up, I'm thinking, okay, why do we want to do this? Okay, ostensibly to raise money.
Sure.
But I guess I just lament that far too often the default answer to how do we raise money is, sell alcohol, encourage gambling, things like that. I also question whether there's frankly more to it than that. You mentioned my vote against the beer garden at Maple Woodstock, which people may have some questions about that, and in that case, the stated rationale again was to raise money so that they could hire bigger acts, So the vote again in the first year, I voted against it, as you noted, was to allow a beer garden, and then that was the first year, and then this year, the vote comes up again. Well, let's look back. What actually happened? And they'll say, well, let's look at the facts. I mean, the fact is, and I don't know whether or not people are aware of this, but in the first year they lost money. Okay.
Who's they? It was St. James Gate was running it, right?
The organizers. Again, the whole rationale was to raise money, but they actually lost money. Okay, this information is in the information that we
Who is they that lost money? Was it Maple Woodstock or the proprietors of the beer garden?
The endeavor of the beer garden itself. Who actually was the people or whatever. Was it Gary Shippey and the other folks? I don't know exactly by name. I don't remember anymore. But that aspect of it. I'm not talking about Maple Woodstock as
right.
Whole.
The people who ran the beer garden.
Correct.
They paid a certain amount to operate the beer garden, and that money went to Maple Woodstock.
Yeah, again, how the internal bookkeeping
right.
goes on, I don't know all the answers to that.
But Maple Woodstock didn't lose money on it.
No.
But the people who paid for the right to have the beer garden did not make as much money as it cost them?
They lost money.
I see, okay. Well, now, did the same proprietors want to come in and do it again, or...?
Well, the fact, exactly, that's what happened this year. They come back again and say, hey, we want to have a beer garden again. And again...
They being Maple Woodstock?
Yes.
Okay.
So, they lost money. Again, the whole rationale, remember, was to raise money,
right.
More money. They lost money. Now we want to do it again. Now, in this year's proposal, again, while noting they lost money, they said, but Chief Cimino says we can have one less security officer because there were no incidents last year, and he's
right.
comfortable doing that or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But they're still not projecting making a whole lot of money. So the question is, again, why do it? Okay, and in the absence of the rationale again, which was to raise money, well, that's not clearly the reason for doing it. Then what is the reason? And none of my colleagues answered that question. Okay, it's not about raising money. Why are we doing this? In the absence of any other compelling rationale, I just didn't see that it was a good idea. Again, my whole perspective on it is that alcohol and children don't mix.
Right.
So again, we come back to here now, to the question of whether to permit the sale of alcohol in the library. And again, the rationale is that, hey, we'll raise more money that way. As I said before, I go to the library all the time. Indeed, when my kids were in kindergarten, my wife and I brought them there all the time, and they come home with stacks of books.
Yes,
okay?
mine as well.
I didn't bring them to a bar.
Right.
Okay, and I know that it said that, well, the area that the alcohol will be sold in is during special events. It'd be cordoned off somehow, blah, 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 blah. And, and Mr. Ryan noted in last night's meeting that, this change to the ordinance wouldn't be kind of a carte blanche approval for them to sell alcohol whenever they want, but they'd still have to come to the township committee for approval for, whatever event we're talking about. But, as I said last night, when he said that, I said, in my opinion, it's never appropriate to sell alcohol in the library.
Right.
I just fundamentally disagree with that premise.
Was there any estimates of how many events they have that are adult events that this would occur? It seems like they don't have that many.
No, it was not stated.
And it also seems like if you want to raise money for the library by selling alcohol, you can have it somewhere else, correct? I mean, didn't we just approve at the Bergdorf Center they can have alcohol?
Well, the Bergdorf Center is there's actually two facilities public that can, and that is one of them, correct.
Right.
So this would add the library to that list of places, the Maplewood places that can do that. But again, as I voted against it because, again, I just don't believe in alcohol and children don't mix. And just by the way,
please,
for it's worth, I've actually had a few residents come to me and let me know that they agree with my decision and appreciated me bringing that perspective to the discussion. So, I'm not alone in feeling this way.
Was this something that the library director brought to the township committee, or was it a group that wants to hold events? Who kind of raised the issue?
I would have to presume it would be Sarah Lester, the director of the library, yes. So, she was actually in attendance last night, although she didn't speak because it's, again, just a preliminary hearing.
Right, and to remind people that there is another vote on this, in 2 weeks?
Correct.
And then the vote then can be held. But back on the Maple Woodstock, it seems like with alcohol at Maple Woodstock, it does walk a fine line where before the beer garden, people bring their own alcohol. And I know when they had the summer concerts, that we seem to have fewer of them, but maybe that'll come back. After Maple Woodstock always seems to kick it off. That there was also 2 or 3 more concerts, and people would sort of bring their own alcohol. They'd bring wine, they'd bring beer. It would be sort of low-key. The cops wouldn't bother people if they didn't cause trouble. Mm-hmm. Now, again, that's not legal to bring alcohol into the park, but it was sort of tolerated. I think one of the thoughts was, well, if we have it in the beer garden, we can enforce it better around the rest of Maple Woodstock, and people can't really complain as much because listen, if you want to drink, there's the beer garden, go drink there. Now, obviously, it's not the same when you sit with your blanket and you're watching the music and you have a glass of wine or a beer. How do you walk that fine line?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I don't know, because obviously beer is not allowed in the park.
Exactly. Your first point there, again, beer is not allowed in the park. So, kind of stop right there.
Yeah.
Now, again, when I go to Maple Woodstock, I just think that it's just such a wonderful family-oriented event. I mean, I see the kids, going through with their hula hoops and tossing frisbees and playing with their balls, and I see, all the little kids playing there or whatever. To me, sometimes I've even actually, had pictures and I kind of describe this to people who are not from Maplewood, and they hear about this, and it sounds so idyllic, if you would.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great event.
Yeah, exactly, and it is. I just don't see alcohol in that circumstance as being a positive. The kids are running with the hula hoops and they run by somebody. I understand you're saying, well, it's low key and it's, kind of, quote unquote tolerated. By the way, I don't know, again, being the public safety chair, I'm certainly not going to say that there's any kind of wink agreement.
No, I don't think, I think since the beer garden, when the beer garden began, I think that it ended any chance for people to bring their own, because again, it brought up the issue when it hadn't been brought up really before. And I don't think, and I know police, I don't remember because I didn't bring my own, because I knew there would be the beer garden, and I had a feeling there would be more of a crackdown on the alcohol, not only from the legal aspect, because it's not allowed in the park, but from a sales aspect. When you go to a ball game, or you can't bring your own because they want you to buy their beer. Well, in this case, that seems to be the case.
I did see, as an aside, not that I spend a whole lot of time on Maplewood Online, but I do remember there was even a conversation thread where someone said, well, this beer garden sounds like an okay idea, but if that means that I can't bring my own, then I'm not so keen on it.
Right, but the truth is...
the fundamental premise.
Right. You can't bring your own anyway. You're not supposed to. Just like smoking, you can't smoke in the park anymore. And that's a whole other issue. I don't think anyone can complain about that one. But I did like the fact that if I can't bring my own, I can go to the beer garden. Although my wife and I did go to the beer garden, and it wasn't as much fun to sort of be in there and drink a beer as it is to sort of sit on your blanket or chair. I'd rather just have no alcohol and watch the show or walk around than sort of be stuck in the beer garden. And it didn't seem like there were a lot of people in there, and that seemed to be confirmed by your information that it lost money. So I don't know what comes of that. That seems a little more tolerable than the alcohol at the library, because I don't think people are really clamoring for that. And like you said, the library, first of all, it's not a once-a-year thing. It's an everyday thing. And there are kids that go there. There are families that go there. I put alerts up all the time about all the great programs. I don't think a lot of people know how much the library has. You can go there every day and find great events for kids and parents.
That was actually one of the things that I took pleasure in last night, was giving the proclamation to the library on their 100th anniversary, if you would, and having all the Sarah Lester, et cetera, there, and giving a proclamation on behalf of the Township Committee, commending the library for all that they've done. And I do think that it's as much as they do, and as much as people actually go, I still see it as an underutilized resource.
It is very underutilized. Absolutely. And I also would promote to people, as a reporter, I go on the library website very often. People don't know, I think, that if you have a library card, you have your library number, you can go on their website and you can log into a vast array of archives for many newspapers and magazines. You can get background stories and issues on a variety of newspapers and periodicals if you're doing research, all free of charge, which I don't think a lot of people realize.
Yeah, but even in addition to that, you even have access to resources beyond the physical walls of that library. In fact, I went through the website, and as a holder of a Maplewood Library card, I was able to actually check out an e-book through the availability on their website. And so it actually just arrived today, and so I'm looking forward to reading that.
Great. Well, let's do a quick comment on the upcoming re-election. We've been reporting on the Democratic committee reviewing candidates for their endorsement. You were the only one that they talked to. I think a lot of people see you as a force to be reckoned with after one term on the Township Committee. And it also looks like you may have one lone Republican opposition. Obviously, the primary is coming up in June. You will, if I'm reading the rules right, you will be the only one on the ballot in the Democratic primary, correct?
Correct.
But people can always write in if they wish, but I really don't think that's going to be happening. And then with Maplewood's high Democratic registration, it would be likely that your re-election is pretty good shape. So we give you great credit for that. What brought about first of all, how have you liked serving on the committee, and why did you want to run again?
Well, it's been a wonderful experience. I have enjoyed it. It is a challenging position to be in, and one of great responsibility. They talk about the fact that all politics is local, if you would, and one of the things that in being a township committee member is that the decisions that you make, you see the residents every day who are impacted by the decisions that you make. And so, there's the plus side of that is obviously when you make decisions they like, then, you get the feedback right away. When you make decisions they don't necessarily like, you're right in their face as well.
Right. What do they say? You have to shop at the same stores. You have to go to the same schools. I think it was Lyndon Johnson or it was either Johnson or Harry Truman when someone asked how hard it is to be president, and he said, no, being president is easy, being mayor is tough. And obviously you have a similar one-on-one with your constituents as committeeman. So I have enjoyed the first 2 years that I've been in office. It's been a very
rewarding experience, and I've heard that from past people who've been on the township committee who have said, it's a very demanding position, but at the same time, it's immensely rewarding, and that's something that I have found as well. I like to. I like the knowledge that as the major decisions are made, I've been in a position to have an influence on this. I've certainly learned a lot from my colleagues on the township committee. I've learned a lot from the residents in the community who've given me their feedback on some of the different things that are going on. And so, those things all come to bear as I decided whether or not to consider running again for another term. And, as you've seen, I've made the decision to run again. And I appreciate your remarks about the demographics being such that I would be considered you said a force to be reckoned with. That sounds almost...
Well, that's my word, not yours.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk after Election Day. I certainly am not one to consider anything a done deal until it's done. I do look forward to the campaign, and I look forward to hopefully being able to have the opportunity to serve for another 3 years.
Okay, well, I appreciate your time again. We've been talking to Marlon Brownlee, Maplewood Township Committee member, about several issues, alcohol sales, and his re-election bid, which is looking good. But that doesn't mean people shouldn't vote. The June primary is coming up, and then obviously in the general election. And I want to ask you quickly, the school district election is now going to be moved to November. What do you think of that as both a town official and a parent? Does that help or affect the township votes at all? I don't know if you get people who would vote without the school board race being in there as well. This is an off-year election, because it's an odd-year election. Does that have any? What's your thought, both as someone running for office and also as a parent with kids in school?
Well, that's almost a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I hear you.
Itself. But I will say this: I have lamented over the years that the turnout for school board elections has been abysmally low.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
So from the perspective that it has been moved to Election Day in November, hopefully that will portend a much greater turnout than in years past. And from that perspective, I think it's a good thing. I do have some concerns because of the way the legislation was written, and I am on record regarding what I'm going to say here. That the fact that the Board of School Estimate has essentially been removed from the equation in terms of the amount of money that can be budgeted, as long as it's quote-unquote within cap. It's not something that has to go to the Board of School Estimate for approval. And so the argument is that will make the members of the Board of Education more directly accountable for their votes on the school budget, which, as I think many people know, makes up 58% of the property tax bill that you get. But the fact of the matter still is that when people's taxes go up, they come to the township committee and say, hey, why are our taxes so high? And to sort of parse out that, well, actually 58 cents on the dollar is attributable to the Board of Education, blah, 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 it's a difficult, the responsibility is still somewhat diffused, let's put it that way. And my concern is that part of the reason, legislation is not written randomly. There's a reason that things are written the way that they are. And in this case here, the fact that it wasn't just that the Board of Education elections were moved to November. That by itself, I think, is a good thing. But the fact that it was also tied in to the fact that if the budgets are quote-unquote within cap, you don't have to go to a vote either from the Board of School Estimate, or if you don't have a Board of School Estimate in other districts, to the public for a vote, is, I think, a deliberate thing. And if you actually go back, and there's actually a thread on Maplewood Online where I say this more at length. If you actually go back last year, the vote on the school board actually would have resulted in a 3.48% tax impact for the school board. And people have in their mind that the cap is 2%. That is not something that would have had to have gone to the Board of School Estimate under this new way of doing things with the Board of Education election in November. But last year, again, because the Board of School Estimate was in place, if you look at the subsequent comments, they did not, because they knew that we were going to vote it down. Well, now that check and balance does not exist. And so what I think you're going to see, both in perhaps in our district and statewide, is what I'm going to call, budget creep, where there are going to be budgets in excess of the 2%. But again, it's not something that anybody is going to have to go to a vote for. And I appreciate, believe me, I'm one of the most ardent supporters of the school system, and I think that they're woefully underfunded, and I think that the formula used to determine how much money we have for the schools is also flawed. And right now the schools are under tremendous pressure to try to deliver a top-notch education for the kids, given the amount of money they have to spend. In the face of the rising costs that they have for health care and things like that, it's just an abominable situation to be in, and it's going to be a very tough challenge. But again, that having been said, that check and balance is no longer in place, and so it's going to be very interesting to see how things transpire. And frankly, I'm on record as saying that while I like the fact that the turnout was going to be higher in November, and I thought that was a good thing, I was on record as being opposed to it, not because of the fact that it would move to November, but because of this other aspect.
Yeah, well, you always have to look at the fine print. So there would be no review by voters or by South Orange or Maplewood town officials of the budget.
Correct. We're only just sort of kept in the loop.
That is a problem. Absolutely.
And again, when you say cap, you have to recognize that quote-unquote cap, without getting too detailed, there are exceptions, if you will, that are allowed and permitted. So when you see the final number, people have in their mind cap, 2%. The reality is you could get something that's 3, 4, percent, if you would, but still be within cap, technically. And because of that, you can get budgets that are in excess of 2%, that don't have to go to any other review other than just, again, the Board of Education deeming it that's what's necessary. So, a conundrum.
Excellent. Well, again, I think I've overstayed my welcome bothering you. I appreciate your time. Again, Marlon Brownlee and Maplewood Township Committee on alcohol, re-elections, and school board. So plenty there to chew on. And again, we wish you great luck as the campaign continues and in all the efforts before the Township Committee. And remember, this alcohol sales at the library will be voted on again in 2 weeks. And we'll, of course, have all the information on maplewoodian.com. Thank you, Mr. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Schrupp.
Be well.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.